I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the City of Kalispell's work session for April 28, 2025. Two exciting items this evening, the reservation and recreation fees, followed up with Main Street Safety Action Plan concept design. So we're going to get started right now with the first item. Mr. Russell?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, as part of our budgeting process, from time to time, we adjust our parks and recreation fees. That includes activities plus reservations. We did that back in fiscal year 2023 as part of our analysis, bringing it forward this year. As was identified, we have had some significant increases within the cost centers as it relates to putting on some of these components. So a lot of the increases reflect that within our activities. But to go ahead and do a run through of the effort, I'll turn it over to our Parks and Recreation Director, Chad Fincher.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as Doug said, last time we looked at our reservation and Parks and Rec fees was in 2023. By guidance of Council, a few years ago, we came up with every 2 to 3 years, we'd review these fees and bring them to Council for any proposed changes that would be necessary moving forward. When we look at our recreation fees, there's two different lenses that we look through to see where we stand with them. So the first is a cost analysis. We look at the direct costs associated to those programs, including any licensing, rentals, reservations, equipment needs, and supplies. Once we have the direct cost of each program solidified, we look at a second lens, which is the market analysis. And what that allows us to do is look at other or similar programs and look at what we're doing compared to what they're doing, what we're offering, what they're offering. And most of the time that's local. Sometimes if we're trying to really justify the program, we'll look more broadly, more regionally, if that type of program isn't within the valley. One thing I believe that that's been stated in the past is that School District 5 is proposing charging fees for use of their facilities. That will have a significant cost on some of our programs. We've incorporated those fees, the proposed fees, in our cost analysis for our programs to utilize their facilities. Some of them you will see have a significant increase, but that's due to caps on our program or how the program operates. So some of our programs we can get more participants in, so the cost that we spread out is among more participants, bringing down that level. Traditionally, we've tried to keep all of our programs that are similar in the same price structure, but due to having this new fee added to us and the way we're being capped with either use of facilities or having enough staff, we've had to kind of switch that model. The pools fees this year, we did do an 8% across the board. You will see during our budget meeting that we have made some structural pool management efficiencies this year, so we are proposing a little bit of a reduction in staffing costs. It won't affect the public or the use of the facility. It'll just streamline some things down there. But with that said, chemicals are still going up, electrical, gas, all those utility rates will still continue to rise. With park reservations, we are proposing an adjustment to the original matrix as well. A couple years ago, we were able to get a new software program to do online registrations. The one thing that we haven't been able to do is put our park reservation fees on there. The problem is the way the matrix is the software couldn't recognize the scale. So it wasn't just simply like a 2% across each one of the columns. It was more of a sliding scale. It became a little more convoluted. We tried to work with our engineers to make the program fit us. Unfortunately, that wasn't an outcome that they could provide. So what we did is we looked at what we had and modeled it so that it could fit in within the software program. But we also wanted to reflect on what kind of outcome would that have on our rentals as well. So we took the previous year's rentals and ran it through the new matrix and the new proposed fees to see what effect that would have. Obviously, raising rates has an effect, but we wanted to make sure that our reservations, that we weren't causing a significant increase in some of those programs that are, some of those rentals that we traditionally have. So going back, even through our big events like the Great Bear Festival, the Arts in the Park, and those things, along with our private rentals, most of them are just a few dollars difference compared to what they would have paid in previous years. We did find one, it was a reunion that had a 7-hour block, and it would be several $100s more for them under the new matrix. However, looking at what they're proposed, or what they held within the park, we think they would just go to a 6-hour block at time versus a 7-hour block. They still would be within the range of their previous year's rental. And with that, we have two submittals to you, in front of you tonight. One is the recreation fee schedule. It shows the existing city fees, in-city fee and out-of-city fees, and then our proposal. And then included is our our current matrix for our reservations, and then our proposed matrix, that will be able to utilize the software. And again, most of our rentals will be able to go through that, our software program. There is a few of those that won't be able to do it. The bigger festivals that are held in the parks, or anything that requires more permitting, which may be a special event permit through the city or a vending permit, those still won't be able to go through the system, just because we need to go through a little bit of a protocol question and answer with them, make sure that we have all the information we need for that event. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about our fees, proposed fees.
Quick question on the School District 5, what are the increases? So as you look at the after-school program, 25% increase for in-city fee, $10 to $12.50. What percentage, what percentage of that increase is related to the school fees being added in there?
So each one's a little bit different. If you're looking at the amount of participants, I will say that when we were looking at it in its entirety, it's 8 to 20%, depending on the program.
Okay. Then the alternative is we don't change anything and the general fund supports this.
Predominantly, again, it's going to depend somewhat upon the specific program. If it's within a pool activity, that may differ, but just in general, you do have that initial transfer from the general fund that's made automatically, that was set up years ago with just mills going straight to the Parks and Rec Special Fund. So, but to answer your question, yes, it would be supported by general property taxes.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Your Honor. The school district fees, I get it. They're up against the wall right now, not knowing where they're heading with their funding. But they've been talking about this for some time for programs outside of their own school district, sports, rental of gyms, et cetera. Have you negotiated with things that the city has done for the school district, parking lots or other things? How long has this negotiation gone on to come up with this percentage of 8 to 20% with the school district?
I can tell you there's numerous things that are partnered with the school district. In reality, they've worked very well on a variety of things. I don't think obviously we know what the school district is facing.
I understand.
So-
That was my first statement.
Yeah.
I understand that.
I guess the question, are you expecting us to not pay these?
I'm looking at the parking lots, the things that the city has done for the school. Have they all been taken into account as we negotiate this price, which will affect every kid and or adult in sports using a school district facility? it's all been discussed back and forth with whom?
So from our department, so there's been a reciprocal gentleman's agreement, which was they would use our facilities for free, we'd use their facilities for free. We understand that there is a utilizing their facilities, there's things that happen there that need to be accounted for. And when we talk to the school district, again, understanding their perspective and knowing if it was our facility, those things that they're dealing with and what they're trying to do, no longer would those rentals that they utilize our facilities for would be free either. So that's about $7,000 to $8,000 in rental fees that we would see over the year based on what they've used in the past. But directly negotiating those other items hasn't been our purview as far as saying, oh, the city's done this, we'll do, why that? We're going from our lens of Parks and Recreation, utilizing their facilities, them utilizing our facilities, and figuring out what that looks like going into the future. At this point, as I understand it, the school board hasn't adopted it. What I understood is the intent was to take it to them. There was going to be some flexibility in these fees, meaning that they wouldn't implement them hard, meaning as this, like tomorrow, if the board accepted it. However, in our conversation, we let them know that we have to plan for this. It would take next fiscal year. They said that at that time, that if these fees were to be implemented or adopted, that there would be some leeway until we had budget authority to pay for those fees.
Thank you. So if the levy passes for the school, is there a change in fees for the city if the levy passes?
That's hadn't been part of the information we've received. And again, I understand the concept of it, but, we've had the same discussions with people that put on events in the city and have objected to reservation fees going up. And the council's response, and I think has always been appropriate, is there are costs that are incurring. And it's really not a matter of different leeway for this, which we've treated everyone the same. This is a cost that we're incurring that we need to recoup. So quite honestly, that's the approach we're accepting from the school district. They have to recoup fees, and appropriately so. So, we've understand, and they know what has been provided by the city. They still have to recoup those fees. I mean, if the council would like us to push back on them, just give us that direction. But we've accepted the same process that we've taken with other groups reserving rentals. I mean, we get the question from nonprofits every time we have an increase, but we're a nonprofit, we can't do that. Well, the response is we have to recoup our costs just like any other business would. So that's the same approach, quite honestly, that we've had as it relates to someone telling us they're increasing their fees.
I understand that, and I appreciate that answer. That is really what I wanted to hear. Janitorial costs have gone up for the school district. You don't provide janitorial costs. You don't send in a janitor after use of the gym. You try and leave it as good as you can. Electrical costs have gone up for the school district. Turning on the lights for the gym, they've all gone up. You don't provide a janitor. You don't provide cleanup.
Just our existing staff. So we do go through and try to tidy it up, leave it as we found it. But we don't directly cover a janitorial service or our own janitorial staff going in and doing those cleanings.
Thank you.
Mr. Minley?
Thank you, Your Honor. What does your user curve look like? Are you seeing a trend up, or are you starting to see a trend down on your users?
So it's unique this year. In past years, we would see a spike about this time of year, and then it would level off as we got closer to summer. But with online registration, what we find is it's pretty steady. Our numbers are pretty similar from past years. It's just the way that it comes in is more a trickle versus just, it used to be with our summer day camp, people would want to get in, make sure and reserve a spot. They had to come in during business hours. And so it made it more difficult. But again, we're seeing more of a steady flow, not steady flow year round when we have programs opened.
Okay,
And our numbers are very similar to years past.
sure. So then below on the park attendance, at what levels there are, do we have a park employee that audits that, or is it just on the honesty program of, you just tell us you're gonna have 100, you'd be charged 100?
We found the honesty system the best for us so far. We've had events that happen in our park and they've come back in and said, wow, we surpassed our numbers. We need to make up the difference. Most of the time when people will adjust from year to year and be cognizant of it. So we haven't had too many issues with people underestimating and then overusing.
Sure. And then I guess the last question I'd have is the in and out. How is the process? Do you just check every single time somebody does it, check their address?
So the software system does.
Okay.
We have a file that once somebody enters their address, it will compare their address to what's within the files. We work with the GIS department in the city to provide this, so it automatically checks it. There are some anomalies that are out of city but have city addresses, or vice versa. And when something like that happens and somebody gets kicked out and they think they're in city or out of city, they do call us and we make those verifications. We also do that for rentals as well. Through their proof, we can go in within the system and make them an in-city resident for our programs.
Okay. Is there a way to track that so that if somebody goes in and they start entering and they find out they're not a citizen, and then you see that same event re-enter and now all of a sudden there's a city resident?
So more often what you're going to find is you'll find somebody within a program or a event that I may not be a city resident, but you're a city resident.
Sure.
You'll make the reservation on behalf of our event to get that discount. Yeah, that happens, but
I just, the reason I ask that is I just think it'd be much easier if it was a price in between, and it's because there's so many people that live right on the fringe that, or consider themselves in the city, and so I didn't know if that would make it easier, streamline your processes.
with online reservation, it's much simpler for us. If we still had to do it with the paper process, that would make us have to look up in the GIS on most everybody to make sure that they were within the city or out of city.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Graham?
I haven't seen anywhere on here where this might be the case, other than what might have been talking about partner programs, but I don't think it hits this. Do we do anything for like scholarships that people can go and donate to for things that might? I mean, we have a lot of activities that we put out there, but I think some of them, like say swim lessons, are just like, they're very important. They're all important, but like say swim lessons boiled down to the basics, kids learning how to swim. We have the fee there. I was just wondering if we've ever had anybody want to put something like that together for availability of funds for kids to be able to do that might not otherwise be able to afford to do that.
It's a great question. So we do have a scholarship line item, and where that scholarship money comes from actually is through our photography of sports programs. Part of our hiring of them is the funds that they bring back to the city go into that scholarship program, where it allows us to go through and follow the school district 5's school lunch program that they had set up years ago. So we follow that model, and it does provide opportunities for individuals to apply for those scholarships for any of our programs. We also seen a local business recently do a little bit of fundraising and put it directly towards sports. So we have some money set aside for sports particularly, but generally, and you'll see it in our budget when we have that meeting. But that funding there is available to anybody that meets the School District 5 criteria and can be applied to any of our programs.
Okay. Thanks.
And other donations could come into that to help people who can't afford it.
Yeah, that's just our mechanism currently. Like I said, a local business did provide us another opportunity, so we've exceeded our fundraising that we presented to council last year. But yes, if the community, if a business or an individual wanted to increase that or put it towards some kind of scholarship program, we're happy to look at that opportunity and make it part of giving back to the community.
Thank you. And so if the city didn't have the school district as a partner in a gymnasium, a facility to use indoors specifically is really the big thing here. I mean, wintertime, there's no place else for all these important programs to go. The studies have been done that it would cost 25 million to build a facility for either the county or the city to be able to house their own programs would be totally unattainable for the Parks and Rec Department, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're very well aware of what our budget consists of. There's not a whole lot of,
Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if you had your own facility? But it would be something enormous for the taxpayers to fund something like that, to have a facility that was accessible to participant programs, adult and children, just something beyond your comprehension for your budget.
I think it's more of a community need and desire than maybe one municipality could provide. We've heard and seen some ideas coming through the community that may be lifted that will ease the pressure on the school district's facilities. But again, growing communities will always have some kind of bottleneck with facilities, just because the community's growing, there's going to be more opportunities, more people want to give opportunities. So it's a struggle for a lot of communities. But again, we know what our budget is, and it's not a realistic or something that we could lift.
Sir, how many kids do you serve a year?
I would
Total
have,
number, all participants, all programs?
I would have to get back to you on that. I think if I threw a number out there, it would be really off. Like, just because even the summer program, I can tell you that we have 100 participants a day, and we go, it's like 8,600 or 9,000 participants in that program, just based on availability per day. Doesn't mean there's unique users. It just means there's 9,000 times somebody's participated in that program. So it'd be something that we would have to put together and bring back to council.
I understand that. In most programs, serving kids for 4 to 6 weeks, maybe a camp a week, 45, 35 to $80. What's your highest program cost for a child?
Once you get into like outdoor adventure camp, where we're doing stuff with partner organizations, it gets a 4-day to 5-day thing is like $300 and some dollars. So, yeah.
Most program, a basketball or a indoor gym program for 6 weeks.
So most of our programs are 6 weeks. We try to keep all of our programs at 6 weeks. The ones Camps and stuff are unique. They're either a week long or 2 or 3 days, depending on what they are, or a season such as summer day camp. The program is capped depending on what we have for instructors or for what we have or space. So sometimes for instance, our basketball program, we're limited on space. School district doesn't have enough room for us, so we have to make some caps. Spring soccer, we have lots more availability, so we serve more. I think it was 400 kids in our spring soccer program, but we have the availability. Some of our partner programs, they can, because they're specialized and they require certain apparatuses, outdoor adventure camp, whitewater rafting. You can only have so many participants within that program because they only have X amount of spots available.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll just say that, I'm remembering this conversation from last time we were looking at fee increases, that everybody feels be nice to keep these as low as possible, at the same time recognizing the fact that we do have costs and have to cover those. And somebody with a child and doing programs like this, all these fees remain very reasonable relative to other things that are out there. And also knowing, trying to sign up for some of these programs, the popularity of them, that they're always booked, and you gotta be on it to get into some of these programs that are real popular, because it's a real asset to the community, these programs that we have, and that's recognized by the fact that so many people want to sign their kids up and participate. And so you hate to see the fees go up, but at the end of the day, you have to have some coverage of costs, and I think they're reasonable. So no question, just a little bit of commentary.
Other questions, discussion? Been reasonable to move forward? Mr. Dowd, you got your hand
Yeah,
up?
it does seem reasonable to move forward. The cost of everything has gone up. I'm specifically wondering about the pool. I know last time we talked about this in '23, we were pretty underwater with fee versus what we were spending on that facility. How's it looking now? Is it kind of evening out better since that last time we raised the fees, or is that still something, because of the cost of chemicals and stuff, that is really kind of upside down?
So again, if we are trying to recoup per participant the cost of what the pool takes to manage or to open, we're still going to be at a deficit. It would be $17-ish per person to get in, and it's a short window for those swim times. One thing I will say is we're looking at opportunities to shift some time around. Again, we're looking at efficiencies, knowing that we have some things that we can't control, such as chemicals, heat, electricity at the facility. Some of those things can be controlled a little bit. But looking at that, we're looking at efficiencies this year, trying to reduce what it does cost. Just because we know that that's the best way we can do this without hiking the fee up so much that we think the participation level will drop dramatically, so we'll still be in the deficit with it. It's really hard as a municipal pool. Even with most pools, they run into a lot of issues. We've talked with Logan Health at one point, I think it was last year. They were going to close their pool, do some upgrades for a period of time. And they were looking at how to give their membership some activities at the pool and trying to work with us. But it was a conversation we had with them about, the management of pools, how to make them less prone to deficiencies, but they're inherently expensive to manage. So it would be I believe it'd be very difficult to raise the fees such that the participation rates still equal enough to cover the cost of what it takes to keep the pool open.
Yeah, it's kind of what I thought. So, I mean, you gave me a good number there. So you said something like 1750 if we wanted to kind of break even, right? Yeah. My other question is just because I'm curious. I see that we're offering tennis this year. Has that been a popular program? You have a lot of signups for it?
We have. So there's a new tennis pro in town, obviously working with different agencies, but trying to grow the sport back to what it used to be. We offered tennis years ago, but we just didn't have a tennis pro to continue that. The gentleman came in from another community, he's really grown it, wanted to partner with us. I believe he's partnering with the college as well, to try to grow the program to what it used to be in the valley.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was interesting seeing that we have it available again.
How many courts do we have then?
So the city owns and maintains 4 courts, and then we are in partner with FECC and the school district on additional 12 up at FECC.
So, sorry, I didn't have my hand up. Okay. Ryan, I agree with you. These programs are a huge asset to our community, for our youth, and it's something over the years that's gotten a little more closer to me as far as, paying attention to it. And, I know over the last couple of years we've had increases, and I understand that. I understand costs have to be passed on. I just worry about a cumulative effect over the last couple of years, of where we're at now versus where we were 5 years ago. And that's why I brought up the mention of the scholarship end of it, because yeah, sure, there's, these programs are going to be packed full of kids at these rates. But what I want to make sure is that it's still available for, let's just face it, anytime something goes up, somebody's going to drop off somewhere. And I just don't know how much do we put out there that this scholarship possibility exists for businesses or individuals to donate to. I wonder if it was something that was put out there more, maybe like, the school has the booster club for sports and stuff like that. I just don't know how much we push that.
So traditionally, it's been our program that we set up with photography. I will say that in years past, the nurturing centers had grants available, and we would have people go through them for like our summer program at Camp Woodland. So that program's substantially more throughout the summer, and they had opportunities to reduce it more than our scholarship was. So I think that, if we, the city, were to put it out there, maybe there are more opportunities that would come to us that we could add more to what we've budgeted. But again, we've looked at taking what we've done traditionally and working with the photographer to try to increase those costs. And then as people come in and look, there's been smaller scholarships from local families, trying to identify a kid in need. But nothing that's more of the substantial end that would spread over more of the community.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say, and you've heard me say it before, is we're careful on solicitation for donations. We essentially,
And I was thinking that before I was, yeah, but I
because you can
just,
see my eye twitching.
yes, I did. I'm like, here comes Doug. He's going to shut me down.
Well, our Parks and Rec does a great job of sponsorships on various events, picnic in the park, and that's a little bit different than seeking just donations.
Okay, I got it.
And, we try and keep arm's length away from trying to solicit direct donations to create those relationships that may be a quid pro quo type environment. It's, and I know you've heard me say it before, but it bears repeating. Even my professional association has a restriction against city managers seeking donations in the community they work in for anything. So part of Rotary, We sell 2 tickets a year. I don't sell them, I buy them. Just because you don't want that type of perceived relationship in the community.
I just wonder, and I very much support the scholarship idea as well, and I'm glad we have some program
Sponsorship.
sponsored, yeah. I just wonder now that we're, because I know last time we talked about, we didn't have the online reservation thing. That's kind of new, and now we have kind of it's the bulk of what we're doing, I assume. I just wonder, I'm looking at some of these fees, like, $12.50 and whatnot. If we can't build into the program where we have a roundup for the scholarship, give the people option of adding 50 cents, $1 to their fee to put towards a scholarship fund. And it tacks on to every, kind of at the end of every payment processing that, give people a chance to do that. And it's an opt-in.
If that's what council wants us to do, you just see that everywhere. And we've tried away from that active solicitation. If council wants us to put that program in place, all it takes is a direction from the governing body.
How many people on council raise your hands, check the box, I want to donate money to the presidential election campaign when they do the
Sometimes.
Go.
I asked for the money I did in the past to come back.
Yeah. Hey, it's just, we get flooded with these things, rounding up, and, I mean, the state tax return now, it's like, oh my God, how many boxes do I ignore now? So it's crazy.
Well, with you do it at the store, and it allows the company to take a tax deduction for your charitable donation that you paid at, and so it helps them financially. So you see a lot at stores. That wouldn't be the case with the city. I'd feel better about doing it for the city than I would at Target or something.
Gosh, they book it as revenue and then as an expense, so.
I actually appreciate what Mr. Hunter is trying to say. I guess this would be a solicitation, not from the city manager, of any potential sponsorship out there. I don't want to see a kid displaced. I don't want to see somebody not be able to join a program and be involved. It would be nice to have groups step up without having it something that could come back to haunt the city. But I do believe those people are out there, and this is very, very important to kids and young parents who are trying to make everything stretch, every dime stretch. This is such an important program. I like what you're saying, and I get what you're saying, Mr. Russell, but I don't want to see anybody displaced at all. I'd rather keep them on a court and busy than in a court. That's what I always said running county parks and recreation, and I think this is a start for a child or anybody involved in recreation instead of doing other things. This is a positive atmosphere, a good outlet for children and parents who may not be able to afford it. And thank you for all the programs that you run. They're incredible.
Sandy.
Okay, Mr. Russell, don't kick me out. Just a question. Flathead Electric does their roundup for safety. Would swimming lessons be something that I know the city can't apply for with Roundup for Safety, or could a private citizen apply for that? I mean, they do bike programs, bike helmets.
We receive Roundup for Safety funds from Flathead Electric frequently. Police, fire, I think we may have even done some street lighting components. I'd have to go back, but we've done those components.
Okay. Thank you.
So I guess along that lines, one other avenue that you can, my mic is on. Sorry. Other avenue that you could do, and I don't know what the city's stance on them is if a a group of citizens in the community stood up a 501c3 foundation to be able to raise funds through that and not connected to the city. And then they make a donation to the city for a scholarship. Would that be a more favorable route?
Well, I'd definitely be more favorable, and we've had, like, Friends of Lawrence Park, we've had groups establish foundation type things before.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't stop anyone from donating.
Right.
We just have tried to stay away from actively soliciting
Seeking, yes.
donations.
So I'm going to circle back to the topic. Is everyone okay with the schedule that was
Yes.
presented?
Yes.
Yes.
It'll just come forward for action at
Action,
a future, and we just
yeah.
wanted to, anticipating that there's interest in discussion related to it, since rather do it today than in the midst of our budget workshops directly. So again, kind of get a two for the price of one.
Okay. Then I'm just going to, any public comment on reservation and recreation fees?
Arthur Fredheim, 9th Street East. I was just gonna say, I like the idea that a couple of members are suggesting of having that optional roundup. I mean, I know I went through the pool and I don't know if I did my swim lessons, but at least, spent a lot of summers, going to Woodland Park Pool, and it's really valuable. I know I have a friend who coaches the youth hockey that they do at Woodland Park, and so I know how important that is. And I think if there was, I know they don't want. I know the city doesn't want city employees going around actively begging people for donations. But I think if there was an option, whether that's a button or a checkbox, I do think that you might actually see some revenue come in that way. And I think that there wouldn't be a lot of danger of conflicts of interest if it's, I don't know how much, but presumably less than $5 at a time, unsolicited donations that, you guys probably don't even know who's doing it. I think there's a lot less conflict of interest, potential for conflict of interest there than with a larger partnership where somebody's arranging to put their name on a sign. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, sir. Next item, Main Street Safety Action Plan Concept Design.
Hey, Mayor and Council. Previously, Council has adopted the Main Street Action Plan. That was the initial planning effort. I can't remember the date of the adoption on that. But upon adopting of that, we went further with the remainder of that grant to do an actual concept for the downtown area and incorporate that into a potential future grant application through the Safe Streets for All program. So we're at that point where we've done a lot of public outreach. This is a start to even more as we have this concept design. Some of the next steps will be a resolution of intent to hold a public hearing before council. Then obviously that public hearing, and then a potential resolution for seeking the grant funds. So to present the staff report on the concept design and the timeline moving forward, I'll turn it over to Jared Nygren, our Development Director, and to present the staff report.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, it's been a long time coming, but do have the final concept design memorandum, which is phase 2 of the Safe Streets for All planning grant. So we've gone through the planning grant process, worked through the Main Street Safety Action Plan. There was a number of projects in there that counts, as the manager alluded, there was a number of projects within that, in the city and the county, all around in a larger planning area. At that time, the council chose to hone in and focus more on the downtown core, Main Street, First Avenue East as West. And you may recall also the demonstration grant for East Oregon, which is still outstanding. Meaning we do not have a grant agreement in place at this point in time with Federal Highways. But at this point in time, we spent the last 7 months since council adopted the Main Street Safety Action Plan in August, working with our consultant and the public, coming up with some design concepts in the realm of safety. and safety improvements, because the plan did identify some safety issues in the downtown. And this goes back even farther than that. The downtown plan, the transportation plan, all these documents talked about needing more planning, and that's what this did. So really, we're to the point where council could potentially proceed with an implementation grant if you so choose. And Rachel Grosso with Kittleson is going to kind of go over what we've done here the last couple of months and the findings. Also got Andy Delighten online. Got Bob Vose in here with MDT just to kind of answer some questions, give you a little bit of an idea of what we've been doing and what the future could look like, and go from there.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We have prepared a presentation that you'll see shortly, and there we have it. Okay, so we'll start with on our agenda. Microphone? Okay. We'll start with an overview of the project, just for a refresher for anyone who's not familiar. We'll hop into the actual concept designs as well as talk about some of the supporting analysis, and then spend a little bit of time on the Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant application, and then any questions that you have, we're happy to answer. So starting with the safe system approach, that is the underlying methodology that underpins the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. It's the basis of the Safety Action Plan. And what we have here is really the 5 tenets of how we're approaching this concept. What our concept really focuses on is the safe roads and the safe speeds. So addressing those 2 elements of the whole approach. Of course, there are other elements that need to be brought together as well. And what's really important to recognize about the safe system approach, this is kind of this is nationwide, but it's also very much statewide. The safe system approach is kind of the method for achieving the goals laid out in Montana's comprehensive highway safety plan, really addressing some of the concerns that were found in the vulnerable road user safety assessment. That's a pretty recent document. And then, of course, supporting the statewide Vision Zero commitment, which is 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries on any public roadway in the state of Montana. So really trying to uphold all of that at the local level. As Jared mentioned, this Main Street Safety Action Plan and concept designs has had 2 phases. That first phase was to create the comprehensive safety plan that reflects the community desires, incorporates best practices, and is, of course, eligible for further funding. The outcome of that was the Safety Action Plan that was adopted last summer, and also the Oregon Street Demonstration Grant application. Phase 2 focused on concept designs and cost estimates for 3 key corridors as directed by council to further evaluate the impacts and the trade-offs of each. The key outcomes here, of course, are the actual concepts, which you'll see soon, and then the implementation grant application should you choose to proceed forward. And if anyone has a question about the difference between demonstration and implementation, we can talk about that too, because, they're just kind of terms. The phase 1 planning area was some of the city of Kalispell, some areas of Flathead County. You can see here that was really focusing around the downtown area. And then phase 2 honed in on that Main Street corridor, as it's the Main Street Safety Action Plan, but recognizing the wider network. As mentioned also, our phase 1 kicked off in January of 2024. We had 2 rounds of community engagement during March and May. Our safety action plan was developed following that and adopted during the summer. And we also went after and were awarded that grant application in late summer, early fall of last year. During that time, we also kicked off phase 2, which involved, of course, data collection, making sure that we're able to kind of back up the assumptions that we made during phase 1, particularly about the summer versus winter volumes and traffic patterns. We used that data to design the initial concepts. We workshopped those with staff from the city, the county, and MDT. Based on those refined concepts, we completed the technical analyses, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And then we brought those to the public so we could really understand what community members and business owners thought of them. That happened in late January. Based on that feedback, we finalized these concepts, and that's what you'll be looking at tonight. And of course, if you choose to proceed, we'll talk a little bit more about that grant application. So hopping into the concept designs, I just wanted to bring up first that there were a lot of things that we were balancing while we were in the initial phases. Thinking about lane widths, thinking about the design vehicles that need to be on the roads and using them. It's particularly when we're thinking about turning movements for emergency vehicles, for delivery vehicles, that was on our mind. We heard loud and clear during phase one that parking, on-street parking, is highly valued in the community, both by community members and business owners, so that was a consideration. We were thinking about access and how access to parcels and properties can be provided in a safe way. We talked a lot about winter maintenance to the benefit of everyone. Here, we thought about raised medians and how that separation can be helpful. Thinking about sidewalk space, walkability, and boulevard space, which is the city's term for buffer between roadway and walking space. The provision of turn lanes, and of course where enhanced crossings were needed. So a lot of different priorities to balance, and all of that kind of holding in our hands while we were thinking about this. The next couple of slides have some key safety and mobility treatments, and the reason that I wanted to bring these up is just so we can all have kind of a shared image of what we're talking about when we get into those concept designs a little bit later. So the first things first, this is an image of a roadway reallocation. You can see up there 4-lane section where there's 2 lanes in each direction, parking provided on street on both sides, and then the bottom image of a 3-lane section. That space is reallocated towards bicycles, but we heard from the Kalispell community that on Main Street, we want wider sidewalks and more public amenities. So this is just an example. This isn't, ground truth. On the right side of the screen, we have what's known as curb extensions or bulb outs. More colloquially, you can see there that the curb is extending into the street, creating a shorter crossing distance, and a little bit more visibility at the intersection for people driving and people walking. Forgive my cameo in here. I wanted to use a local example on the left here of what a rectangular rapid flashing beacon is, or an RRFB. Those are the push buttons that light up to alert people driving that there's someone coming near in a crosswalk. A very effective treatment for increasing pedestrian safety at unsignalized crossings. And then over on the right, we have what's known as a raised intersection. This is a bit of a newer treatment. You can see that arrow in the travel lane indicating that a vehicle would kind of come up to the level of the sidewalk rather than the sidewalk coming down to the level of the street. So that's a treatment that can be used not only for traffic calming, but also again for that increased visibility of people at intersections where those conflicts exist. Next up, we have what's known as a leading pedestrian interval. This is very simply when the walk sign illuminates in advance of the vehicle traffic signal. The intention here is to give people walking or crossing a head start into the intersection so that they're more visible, especially when we're thinking about turning movement conflicts. And then a tried and true high visibility crosswalk on the right there. That's retroreflective paint that's very visible both at night and in the daytime, which is very helpful. You can also see an ADA curb ramp right there. So what could that look like on Main Street? You might have seen these before, but in case you haven't, this is a photo rendering that was developed earlier this year of the proposed treatments on Main Street. We are looking north towards First Street, so you can see that center turn lane with the left turn pocket, a travel lane in each direction, on-street parking maintained on both sides of the street, and that reallocated space with wider sidewalks and space for public amenities. That could be greenery, that could be sidewalk cafes for local businesses, that could be room for your placard or a bike rack. There's lots of options, and that's really kind of what we want to look to the business community, but also just the community itself to dictate how that space would be used. We also developed what this looked like a little bit further south on the corridor. So here we are looking south towards 7th Street. Something that we heard during our community engagement in January was that it would be really helpful for parents and caregivers dropping off at St. Matt's and kind of area schools. There's a lot of traffic there in the AM and PM peak, and so we widened those parking lanes so that there's about 3 feet wider than your typical on-street space to facilitate the safe ingress and egress of kids getting to school. You'll also see that hardened median in the center rather than a turn pocket, but if you look south towards 7th Street, you can see the northbound has that space to queue. The impetus behind this is not only to create a succinct visual field looking down south towards the courthouse, which we heard was really, and it's still is a community point of pride and a visual gathering point and focal point, but also separates those traffic, and we'll talk a little bit about how that addresses some of the key safety concerns that we're seeing on Main Street. And then you can also see that wider sidewalk space or pedestrian space, boulevard buffer, being utilized a little bit differently down here. In our concept designs, you'll also see we've marked some of this area out as potential area for greenery, landscaping, permeable pavers. There are options, and we did try to incorporate that. The last thing that I'll say about this one right here is you can see a rectangular rapid flashing beacon over there on 7th Street. That's one of the locations that was identified for an enhanced crossing, not only to facilitate kids walking to school at St. Matt's, but also to access the high schools and the elementary school nearby. Okay. With all of that in mind, there are some any questions?
I was wondering, are you wanting to wait to the very end of all of this before you take any questions, or?
Yeah, let's let
Okay.
Rachel
Let it
do
roll.
the whole
Okay.
thing.
It's not too much longer, I promise. So we, of course, completed quite a lot of technical analysis to support this, make sure that it's really feasible and practical for the community. Starting with safety, because that's the underpinning of this program. Just a refresher, there were 258 crashes on Main Street, including 8 serious injury crashes in the analysis period between 2018 and 2022. For anyone who's not familiar, a serious injury crash is one that one cannot walk away from on your own. So a high cost to both individuals and our community. The crashes on Main Street accounted for 21% of all crashes in the planning area. So if you remember that big map, Main Street is accounted for 20% of all of those crashes. So there's a noted safety issue in the downtown. Furthermore, in that analysis we performed during the safety action plan, 7 of the intersections on the corridor were analyzed to have high crash risk, which means even if they're not having crash history, they have characteristics that are indicative that there could be crashes there in the future, and serious ones. So being proactive about the safety concern that it poses. The most common crash types on Main Street are rear ends, turning crashes, side swipes, pedestrian and bicycle crashes. And the proposed treatments that we just looked at, and we'll look at it in a little bit more detail, address those crash types and safety concerns. So I think that's kind of the first place to start. Then, of course, we really care about the role that Main Street plays in overall transportation mobility in the community. And so we perform traffic analysis in the 2024 or existing conditions and also the 2045 future conditions. We analyze travel time because we feel like that's the most kind of understandable metric. Everyone knows what it feels like to be on the corridor. And so under the build conditions, under our 2024 years, the proposed treatments that you saw in those images and you'll see in the concept designs themselves are projected to increase travel time on the corridor by 30 to 60 seconds, or about as long as I can hold a wall sit. So not that long. And then under 2045 conditions, travel times are projected to increase by about 30 to 90 seconds, so about as long as I challenge all of you to do a plank with me. Pretty minimal when you think about it in those terms, but also pretty minimal when you think about the safety benefits there. Just some more pretty crucial information we want to highlight is that the assumptions of our traffic analysis assume that the bypass would be completed, but we do not assume that there would be traffic diverted from Main Street. And so our analysis took in that 18,000 daily trips that the Main Street currently serves and continued to use that as the baseline for the analysis. And so I won't say that there's no traffic impacts, there are minor traffic impacts, but really what we want to emphasize here is that during that peak period in the morning and the evening, vehicles will experience queues, but that won't be standstill gridlock. It will be more of what is known as a moving queue or a platoon. So you move from one intersection to the other, and if you hit the lights right, you're golden, and if not, then you're kind of in that queue. Really crucially, just wanted to highlight also that the increase in travel times is mostly related to those leading pedestrian intervals, just because they do switch up the timing of the intersection a little bit. Again, the safety impacts there that they're afforded are pretty mild in terms of the overall impact on traffic. And of course, this is also assuming that the existing timing and the existing equipment that is there today would also be there, and there are opportunities to make that signal timing a little bit better and a little bit smoother as well if we were to implement these changes. Last thing I want to mention on mobility is that left turn lanes and left turn phasing will really improve local access and circulation in the downtown, which is not something that's currently the conditions that are experienced. And I think that really does have a mobility benefit that's currently not afforded to community members traveling north-south and trying to access other parts of downtown. Okay. Last thing on here is that the slower moving queues have the added benefit of improving the overall atmosphere of downtown in regards to noise pollution, which was a significant concern for local business owners that we heard actually through all of the engagement events, which brings me to my third point on there, community support. Along with that desire to reduce noise pollution, we also heard a lot about how community members really valued the key design features that enhanced walkability, so those wider sidewalks and those enhanced crossings. We also heard a lot about our concerns about queuing, which I know we've talked a little bit about, and we really tried to talk about with community members in those moments as well. And then we heard about the desire for landscaping, which I touched on a bit. All of these themes really built from what we heard in March and in May of 2024, when community members expressed concerns about aggressive driving and speeding on the corridor, as well as visibility at intersections. So you can see how that's kind of translated from the initial concerns to how we really are trying to address them on Main Street. And just want to reemphasize that there was a notable desire for increased walkability downtown, with wider sidewalks on Main Street and enhanced crossings being those two kind of key elements that we heard from business owners and community members alike. This phase of the project also included an environmental scan and a hydraulics analysis, which we're really just trying to set the stage for the next phase if this project were to continue into final design, which is understanding what kind of drainage improvements would be needed and what kind of permitting would be necessary. So that's buried in the concept memorandum if you want to hear about the water mains on First Ave East. Lastly, just wanted to mention, and I know it's top of everyone's mind, we developed a cost estimate that was a really critical part of the second phase that was a little bit more refined than what the number we originally stuck on this during phase one. That original number was 23.1 million, but because we have added pavement rehabilitation, full depth reconstruction, especially around the courthouse couplet, signal and ADA upgrades and drainage analysis, that number has been refined to the 26.8 million that you see up there on the screen. I have more information about that if you are curious, but I figured you probably want to take a look at these actual concept designs that I've been hyping up. So shall we take a look? Shall we glance about?
Actually, you want to go?
Sure.
Do you have a question on some of those earlier pictures before we jump into the?
Okay.
Yeah, for the picture that you had, right forward one, that one. Just going through and noticing the singular lane with the parking, and then it being the raised median. As far as snow plows, some people have large snow plows, or let's just say our city plows. I imagine, I don't know if MDT still would be plowing this. I don't know, but it just looks really close to the parked vehicles. So I know the plan would be to put it over onto the raised median, the snow. The other aspect of the raised median, and this is just stuff that probably would happen just as a maintenance issue, but I know that in other parts where we have raised medians, the plow will go and hit that that part of the median. So would the plan be to go through and have it kind of ramp up on the part, the travel edge? Would it ramp up so if a plow did hit that, it wouldn't catch?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting way into the details of the design, but yes, that would be the concept. And I don't want to speak for MDT. These are conceptual designs. I'll say when we were discussing what maintenance looked like, this is actually preferable even to today, how it could be maintained as far as plowing. But yes, the idea is that it would be plowed onto the middle. That's why, even though there was a desire for increased landscaping, which that would be a perfect spot, it just won't work with our winter season. So the idea was, yes, it'd be plowed up onto that, then they could get on top of that with the blower, go down and do it that way. So that's why a lot of the designs conceptually looked at how it would be plowed, and the plowing did dictate a lot of the design, whether it was First Avenue West and East and this corridor. So that was laid out that way so that the plowing could
I
happen.
figure, I mean, obviously it's been accounted for width-wise. Maybe it just looks different because there's a big bus sitting there. You know, it'd be different if it was, I mean, our plows are big too, but anyhow, I just was wondering about the proximity to park vehicles with the,
Yeah, they're 12-foot lanes, which is actually, I believe, what's out there today, Bob, or are they 13?
They're 12-foot lanes that
Okay.
are out there today.
So that's one thing we try to maintain, because with some of these safety, they try and narrow the lanes down a lot, and we actually try to maintain the lanes, knowing that, you know, there's reconfiguration. So the lane width would be the same as today. So they're
okay.
realistic.
Any other questions on any of that?
Okay.
Okay. Now I think if I drag this over here. Wonderful. Okay. So here we have the actual concept designs, and forgive me because I can't really see my mouse. Okay. Here it is. So we're starting over here on the north side of the corridor. So north is on the left side of the screen. And just a quick perusal of our legend here. We have blue lines that are showing right-of-way. We have purplish lines that are showing the back of the sidewalk as it exists. We have right-of-way impacts in pink. And then as we move, you can kind of see on this corridor here, we have, I'll just zoom in a little bit more. So it's a bit easier to see. The blue that you see on the sides, that's kind of the existing pedestrian space. That orange is that anything that's considered the new space. And then we have kind of redone the pavement markings, as you can see. So the Parkline Trail crossing would remain as it is today. You can see that that's actually the 5-lane section as it currently exists, turn lanes heading southbound, and then those 2 lanes northbound for queuing. That was very purposely done to make sure that we are having as little impact on the northern intersections that are outside of the scope of this project as possible. And then as we, I'm so sorry that I can't see this mouse very well. Oh, geez. Here we go. As we move down the corridor, you can see the existing traffic signals. You can also see where we have some of those curb extensions that were talked about during the renderings, and where there are or would be left turns permitted, you have those center turn lanes and the queuing areas for them. A lot of the concept designs across the northern half of the corridor look pretty similar. So one of the goals of the safe system approach is to have consistency in the roadway, systemically apply safety treatments so that there's a high level of predictability in no matter what mode you're using to travel. And so that is definitely one of the aims of this concept design, as you can see here. As we come a little bit more south on the corridor, you can see there are a couple of intersections that are unsignalized, and these were identified as good locations to have rectangular rapid flashing beacons. One important thing to note about these RRFBs is that if one button is pressed, all of them flash, and that is a safety measure to ensure that drivers and people crossing know that there's someone in the intersection, kind of regardless of which side they're crossing on, so that there is that adequate safe space to stop. As we come a little bit closer to St. Matthew's Catholic School, you can see those wider parking lanes along the side. I know they probably don't look much wider, but a standard parking lane on street is about 9 feet wide, and these are 12 feet, so more to the tune of the space that a travel lane has. We also have in green there identified a priority location identified by community members who came out in January of where they'd really like to see landscaping or permeable pavers, if possible, as part of this project to complement the imagery and the aesthetics of the courthouse couplet. Around the courthouse couplet, we also identified curb extensions as being a great way to calm traffic for the odd vehicle that does enter the couplet at 8th and 9th Street. What you'll also see here or notice is that the hardened median that's proposed between 6th Street and 10th Street is really an extension of that existing kind of median island that you see today on the courthouse couplet. And one of the reasons we also identified that is because we noticed quite a bit of structural damage from folks knocking into it, snowplows, et cetera. And so widening it, making it a little bit more visible in hopes that won't get so torn up. As we traverse to the southern end of the corridor, this is where things get a little bit spicy. I know that there are definitely mixed feelings on roundabouts in the community, and I totally understand that. What we've done here, why we've presented these, is actually a pairing of 2 roundabouts, and the intention here is to provide increased circulation in this area, facilitating U-turns and left-turning movements where they can be really difficult right now. As I was on my way here tonight, I watched queues form at 11th Street waiting to turn left, where there's currently just a turn lane, but no kind of phasing to help facilitate that movement. And these roundabouts were actually part of the overall traffic analysis that really had the most improved measures in terms of reducing delay for driving in the AM and the PM peak hours, which is why, in addition to the safety benefits that roundabouts pose by reducing crash severity and crash frequency, also have the notable perk of improving traffic operations in this side of town. And of course, they also present the opportunity for public art, wayfinding, and really that welcoming or gateway treatment as you traverse north into downtown, which you definitely have when you're traveling south with the view of the courthouse, but there was some desire that was expressed by community members to make the southern terminus a little bit more welcoming in that regard. And those are our project extents. So that's kind of what the treatments look like on the overall corridor view. Happy to zoom back and forth wherever anyone would like to see, or if anyone has any questions on any of these treatments, seeing them on the road.
Comments? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Yeah, thanks for this presentation. We've had this before us for years. I know the downtown plan was before I even came on council, and it's been part of the plan. And every time I think about it and look at it and hear about it, I just get so excited because I think there's no single action we could do downtown to Main Street that would improve it, make it more enjoyable to spend time, increase business activity, increase visitor engagement and staying in our community and being in our downtown, and our own residents coming to our Main Street and spending time and shopping and spending their weekend evenings than this. This, I believe, will have a tremendous impact on our Main Street, and just be such a incredible improvement to that, enhance businesses and everything. The number one, as we heard, issue with our downtown is the noise and speeds of traffic. And if you ever sit outside of one of our cafes or something, you notice that right away. And this will improve that considerably. And I think actually, we've had the discussions around Kalispell Cruise, and that's going to continue. I think this will improve the reckless driving that we're seeing during cruise.
Easier to do it.
It's much easier now.
You got the roundabouts, right?
At the
At the south end. No, I think it will improve the safety during Kalispell Cruise. And we hear that there is a note about a little bit increased travel times, which I want to talk about that in a minute. But even if you take that as being that will be the outcome, as you said, ultimately it's a trade-off with safety. And so you're getting considerable safety improvement for just fairly minor increases in travel time. But what I think is important to know, which is what you said, is that there was not any kind of assumption or calculation of the diversion of traffic to the bypass. But I'll also add on that is that what experience has found with treatments like this is that people will alter their driving experience. They may combine trips. They may choose to walk or bike or just not take the trip. There's all sorts of kind of knock-on effects in terms of people's behavior that in the end, the prediction of the increased travel times don't actually play out in reality. I have a couple questions. Now that I said all that, I actually have some questions. One is there's a reference on page 48 at the bottom about the bicycle ordinances in chapter 17, section 9 of our code. And I looked at that online and I didn't see what it was referring to. I don't know if there's like an older code online or what, but I did not see that kind of reference that was, or that code that was being referenced. So I don't know if I missed it or what that was referring to.
I was referencing the code that was available as of 2023 online, which may or may not be out of date, but I was accessing that from the City of Kalispell's website. There are several bicycle regulations, notably the prohibition of bicycling on sidewalks, a few other kind of like licensing fees, and some of them I think were still from, I think, 1946. So, of course, just how we view bicycling has changed since then. I probably could talk more about that, but I don't have it in front of me. I apologize.
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
And if
Yeah.
I have misreferenced, then I can, of course, update that.
Yeah, I just check it. I may have been looking at the wrong thing or whatever. So, and then it wasn't clear to me. So there was discussion on the First Avenues East and West because I know talked about not having the bike lanes on Main Street and putting them on First Avenues East and West, which makes sense to me. But then I saw in the discussion first, it looked like maybe we're not looking at bike lanes on First Avenues, or that's in question. It wasn't clear to me where the status is on the bike lanes on First Avenues.
Yeah, as a project management team went through it and the open houses, it just became apparent it really wasn't going to be feasible when you tried to weigh the interest of business owners and parking and snow plowing, doing in the idea of what would meet the federal highways proven safety measure, you weren't going to be able to do it and make everybody happy. So the First Avenues, there is a number of, and I guess we didn't highlight it in the presentation because our at least our recommendation at this point, if council so chooses, if you were to want to go after a grant, would be to go after the Main Street grant. As you saw the cost, it's not going to be feasible to go after both when you look at the cost. Now, the First Avenues plan it's there. We could use it for a future grant or a future construction project as we do them. But yeah, we looked at separated shared use bike paths, and when you started to do the parking and competing interests, it just came out to it wasn't really going to be feasible. Doesn't mean you can't still ride bikes on those avenues like people do now, but as far as doing the separated path, it just wasn't going to meet all the criteria.
So then the question on that, don't have in my mind the transportation plan and the bicycle component of that, but where then is the north-south bike route through our downtown areas if it's not going to be first?
I don't have it in front of me. There's a number of them that would be included in more that shared roadway if they were to be striped that way. Like I said, right now the bicycles can ride on any route, but as far as having a designated bike lane, which is why you would want to do a shared use path, because that is where most people are going to feel protected. But in those corridors, the way they're designed, knowing that the First Avenues still need to carry traffic as well, it's when you start to look, actually this right here actually outlines it pretty good, because if people do come into town, that they now have a way to get to First Avenue East and West a lot easier than they do currently, especially going south. You may recall when Third Avenue was switched, that was the way to get across the highway. You can't really do that easily. And a number of years ago with the Airport Road project, we looked at something very similar, a roundabout in that location, or a light, because it was already ready, but the east-west legs didn't meet the warrants, because we were trying to get more traffic to First and First as well to help distribute traffic in the downtown.
Okay. All right, thank you. Oh, I guess one last thing is just a commentary on the roundabouts, because I'm sure we'll hear about it. But, people always complain about them, but every time, that I'm familiar with, when they look at the research and stuff, roundabouts work. And as the study is looking at this, as you mentioned, it's the biggest improvement in terms of travel times here. So I'm sure we'll hear about it, but roundabouts do work and they make sense at this location. So
Can I jump in for 1 second too, just to kind of highlight a couple things? So it is their design concepts, it's some preliminary engineering, as far as process, knowing that this is something that affects the entire community, the city of Kalispell specifically, this is Main Street, right? So we also got to think about what is Main Street going to be in 40 years? Because as we've been working on the land use plan, almost to a T, what people like is downtown Kalispell. It's history, it's a historic district, and, the future growth, you talked about noise, dust, speed, we got to make sure we preserve that. We've got historic design standards aimed at that, and really that's part of this as well, in addition to the safety. But we have to be transparent as well. There is extra delay that would come with this. There's safety trade-offs. Is that something that community is willing to tolerate? And as it does get further into design, MDT, there is some intersections that have level of service drops that is probably too much, that we would need to work on those further and refine them. Certainly those are things that aren't insurmountable that we would need to get through. But just wanted to talk about that a bit, because we will have a process moving forward, if the council so chooses, a resolution of intent to hold a public hearing where the community could come and, raise their concerns, positive or negative about it, prior to council deciding if they would want to direct staff to move forward with a grant application. So,
Mr. Dowd?
Thanks. I have 3 items. First one is just a comment that I hope I know this is just a concept here, but I hope that if we do proceed with the roundabouts, we take the lessons learned from our roundabouts previously and how the semi-trucks were having trouble with them into consideration. Now, it would be nice if they all took the bypass instead, but that's just not going to happen, especially for eastbound semis. Second off is a question about the lane convergence. I know we don't really have a problem on the south side because it's already converging into one lane. On the north side, I'd kind of like an idea of how that's going to work. It looked very abrupt to me when I first looked at it, right there where the Parkline Trail runs across. But is there going to be plenty of indicators and warning that the lane's going from 2 to 1?
Yes, so we, of course, are not necessarily showing signage on this. That's a little bit next step for this design. But yes, there would be merge warning signs essentially from when one would turn from Idaho Street. The Parkline Trail is a great kind of visual cue that there is a shift in context happening on the roadway. And then, of course, from Idaho Street all the way to Center Street is where that merge is taking place. So there are two to 3 city blocks where vehicles can merge and unmerge, and partially why, as you can see on what is the east side but top of the image there, we have the curb extension there, and then it drops off pretty quickly. The reason for that was so that there would be that opening sense of space for vehicles to queue for Idaho Street. And so it definitely is part of the design, is making sure that there's adequate warning for the merge to occur. And really, as you can kind of see here, there isn't necessarily a merge actually happening as you travel southbound, because there are those turn lanes as they exist today to make those turning movements at Center Street.
And I don't know if the data supports this or not, but this is just a general feeling I have from traveling that all the time. The speeds from Idaho to Center Street, even though it's just 25 the whole way, people are moving way faster than that in that little section. So it concerns me that we're converging traffic where people have historically gone a little faster than the speed limit. but it sounds like that'll be follow on with the actual technical determination. Okay, so my last question is, have we been, even though this is early on and it's concept, what is MDOT's reaction to moving from 2 lanes to 1 along the corridor?
So I'm Bob Vosen, District Administrator for MDT, for the Missoula District, but also, as many of you know, I live in Kalispell. My kids graduated from Flathead High. So I'm here tonight as MDT, but just to give a little bit of background, I am a resident. This is home. That being said, MDT is concerned. This concept has been discussed I've been a member of the community for 13 years now. We've been discussing this the entire time I've been here, and we do have concerns, not with the project, but with the timing. The project itself, there's a lot of potential here. It's going to, you can only stuff so much water through a funnel, if you will, but there's benefits to that as well, and we recognize the benefits to the project. Like I say, our concern is the timing of it. I've been in my current role as the administrator for going on 7 years now. My predecessor, many of you know, Mr. Taves was in this role for several years before me. And one consistent message that we've had is that we don't oppose the Main Street diet. In fact, we're happy to support it if the timing is right. And the key component to that is the bypass needs to be complete so there's a place for traffic to go. There's some opportunities right now that are in front of us. We recognize that, but one thing that I will tell you is our most recent project on the bypass was the expansion of the Foy's Lake area. When we saw that project taking place, there was over 3,000 cars a day that weren't on the bypass from our data and that's averaged over the year. So when you average over the year, it's probably more than that during the summer, because in the wintertime we weren't working, obviously. So we do have concerns that if we neck down Main Street before we complete the bypass, what's that going to do? Right now we've got essentially 6 lanes going through town. If we take 2 of those away before we build the replacements, we do have concerns. So I appreciate the question. Again, MDT is definitely not opposed to the project, but we do have concerns with the timing. Jared and I have had some discussions. There may be some things we can do, trying to figure out.
Yeah, and really what he's alluding to is we've already submitted, as you recall, back at the beginning of the year for the RAISE grant to complete the south half of the bypass. We won't know the results of that until the end of June. This grant is due the end of June. So it's a bit of chicken and egg. So this program is not going to be around much longer. This program likely will be gone. So this funding pot of money, which the implementation grants for $25 million. You saw the construction is about $26 million. There is a 20% match required. However, so there would be, if both were awarded, which would be great because you're looking at potential $50 million that would be coming to the Kalispell community for infrastructure improvements. Construction management is something that we potentially would have probably one overlapping season that we would have to learn how to deal with. So it's something that the community needs to be aware of. But once again, I'm talking the next 100 years of downtown Kalispell. Money like this is not likely going to be available. We've got other needs. When you talk RAISE grant and build grant and these typical grant programs that would qualify for a project like they won't qualify for a project like this. When we start talking West Reserve, those types of projects that also have needs, West Reserve is being constructed right now, but there's still the east half of that. There's other needs in the community. The Safe Streets for All program is really tailored for this particular project. So it's just being transparent about, if we were lucky enough to be awarded both, there's going to be some some internal workings of how we're going to deal with that. I think that we'll be able to do it, but that's what Bob is alluding to, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Nunley?
Thank you, Your Honor. So let me just, when you say the bypass completed, that's the west bypass. There's no discussion on east bypass. We still have an east bypass issue with the semi trucks coming up that way through Maine, right?
So we're talking about completion of the west of the bypass
The
from
west
Airport
side.
Road to Highway 93. That's what we're
Okay.
talking about, yeah.
And Mr. Boyson, I don't know if you know, I mean, is there even any talk at MDT of anything on the west side or on the east side bypass?
Not that I'm aware of. There was years ago, but the decision was made to go with the bypass where it's built now. We've had discussions about what we can do to improve some of the routes through there, but as far as a new bypass, I'm not aware of anything in the works.
It's in the transportation plan, the essentially a woodland connector right out of Snappy's. So a
Right.
connection there. A lot of hurdles, but it is in the transportation plan. A project like that could be eligible for a future grant. We've also talked previously about the Grandview connection. The Grandview connection is actually, I think a council member mentioned the east, because that, all of Evergreen can then get directly to the bypass, so they don't even have to come through downtown. So the transportation plan has actually shown with a Grandview connection, you actually can almost have an east side bypass.
Okay.
Once again, we're working on that as well through transportation. So I would say our transportation plan addresses it. It's just timing and money.
Sure.
So, but yes, the east side bypass, as you want to call it, is still there, supported by, I believe, the Evergreen Chamber and the Commissioner. Everybody sees the benefit of that, but there's some environmental concerns not as easy to overcome.
Sure.
There's some floodplain and such through there that it doesn't make it insurmountable, but there's just, it's something that wouldn't happen quickly.
I guess the other problem that I have with is, because we've heard those discussions that Main Street is too loud. And we know that a lot of traffic goes down there, but a lot of the discussion that folks, when we really drill down to the question of, okay, what is loud? It's the guys with the big engines and the glass pipes and things like that that are revving it, right? And no matter what we do with this, it's not going to address that sound unless we have sound abatement. Am I correct? Am I missing something?
Potentially, yes. I would say you're missing the fact that I believe the mayor said before on 4 Mile, he just slows down and everybody has to follow him. In this case, you get in the queue, you have
get
to
it.
follow, you have to follow the person that's following the speed limit. There's no passing,
get it.
there's no jockeying. So in that sense, you would have to follow.
It's when they're
Yeah.
doing that while standing on their brake to smoke it, right? So I get what you're saying,
Yes,
but I just,
there is
the
additional
noise
buffer.
isn't really going to be abated all that much
It-
with this.
There will be more buffer there between the buildings and the highway itself, so there
Sure.
would be a small component to that as well, but yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, I will say just, you'll never eliminate the noise, but Main Street, I will say the passing on, going in the other lane, to get by is a significant noise contribution when they're kind of laying it on there. So, I think it would do a significant amount to at least ease the, noise, if not eliminate it. I wouldn't say we can expect elimination of the noise problem. But a question about the bypass improvements. What's the capacity component of that we would be looking at to see benefits here in terms of increased capacity on the bypass? What's missing there is it the intersection, the turn onto a bypass from 93? Is that kind of the component that's really missing, or?
So the remaining part of the bypass is the reconfiguration of the southern intersection of 93 and the bypass, as well as the reconfiguration of the airport. What's currently a roundabout will be built to a configuration similar to what we have at Foy's Lake now, where the bypass will be a through movement. There won't be, the roundabouts will be located at the exit ramps, just like what we have at Foy's Lake now. So that's one of the big components that will allow more traffic to flow through. Right now in the mornings, we're starting to see a little bit of a backup. I actually live south off Airport Road, so if I decide not to go to work early that morning, I do have the opportunity to experience that. It's kind of our morning. It's not really a full rush hour. It's more like a rush 20 minutes, near as I can tell. But it is starting to queue up a little bit there for all legs of it. Again, in the afternoon, particularly with the new school in that location and the high school, a lot of those students use that roundabout as well. So we see those key points of the day where we are getting a backup in there. So that's the remaining part. We actually at MDT have it as two separate projects. One is the Highway 93 intersection, and then the other one is the completion not only of that interchange, but to have 4 lanes the full way. So you won't, currently when you're get out of in the area of the airport road roundabout, it's 2 lanes between there and my brain just blanked on the roundabout to the south. But that will be a 4-lane configuration. That roundabout that exists, the 4-lane roundabout at the south end that accesses the RV park, that will remain as a 4-lane roundabout, even when the bypass is at final build out, just because of its proximity to the intersection at Highway 93. There's not enough room to get to build an interchange in there.
Okay.
Just so the council's aware, the grant application that the city went for included the whole project. So if we weren't awarded the grant, likely construction would happen in stages or over time, but the grant did include the whole width of that.
Yeah. Without the grant, we will be reconstructing the intersection, I believe in 28. So about the same time frame, honestly. But that remaining portion with the big interchange stuff, that's a much larger project, and that's another 6+ years till we get to that project without the grant being successful. So, and I do want to add one comment, and that is MDT is very appreciative of the city of Kalispell, Jared and his crew with all the hard work helping us. Without the hard work of the city and the great grant writing, we wouldn't have what we do today, and MDT is very appreciative of that partnership. So I want to make sure to point that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, wow, this is pretty, this is some radical change for downtown. I like what I'm seeing with it, but I agree, and the timing, this is bad timing, but the bypass I feel needs to be done. And hearing that, this has been put together with the same traffic counts that we have today really scares me, because we're going to be pushing the same traffic through 2 lanes, one north, one south. I do know that over time, people would go through and find the different routes, make accommodations to how they're going. But that also scares me. Where is that going? The traffic's going somewhere. So when we've talked about this a long time ago, I think the idea, at least in my mind, is the quality of traffic downtown versus the quantity. Are you down there for a purpose? Or are you driving through? Well, the bypass can go through and get a lot of people going through if you live in the right spot, if you're coming from the right direction, if it's easy to get onto it. In a lot of cases, there's where people live, it's out of their way to go to the bypass. So I have mixed feelings on this. I really hey, we've been talking about reclaiming downtown for a long time, and this certainly does it. So that bypass, the grant application process is unfortunate.
You done hemming and hawing?
I'm done hemming and hawing. I like what I see, but
Just to be clear, it actually was it had existing traffic plus growth on the 3 lane, so it wasn't holding traffic. So it functions in 2045 with growth without diverting traffic to the bypass. So today's traffic numbers with annual growth to 2045 is when you'll have an extra minute and a half of delay
Okay.
without diverting traffic. So it's very conservative because I think a lot of people know traffic probably will go to the bypass, but this isn't even assuming that and it still functions. So
Okay, I got
that,
it.
okay, just wanted that to be clear.
Mr. Dowd?
So when we had the session on the cruise and all of the public comment prior to that and after that, we heard about the noise downtown, but most of the safety concerns, at least in my mind, were the speeding and the reckless driving on First Avenue, either on both sides. I can only guess, and I don't know if you've looked into this at all, but because we're narrowing this down to 1 lane, I'm guessing some of the traffic's going to divert to First Avenue east and west. What is that, what are we looking at there for increased traffic on those streets, and have we taken that into account?
Once again, they just put it down Main Street. It's too difficult to model that. But I'll say First and First already a 3 lane, which is a proven counter safety measure. First and First used to be 4 lanes like Main Street as well. People don't remember that. It went through a road diet as well. And at that time, the world was going to end and it didn't. I'm just saying, because a road diet used to be a theory, it didn't work. We're going on 30 years of road diets now where they're proven county safety measures. So First and First already a 3 lane, so they're already kind of controlled in that sense. And the data's in the Main Street safety plan about the accidents and the serious injuries. It's not like a hypothetical. And the 4 lane is a proven safety measure to reduce those exact incidents by up to 50%. So there's a cost savings with that, and then just, general life safety, so.
Ms. Gabriel? Everyone else is talking a bunch, so I'll let you have a chance.
Jared, can you remind me on the time frame for this from start to finish? How many months are we talking, or years are we talking about construction wise, where Main Street, specifically Main Street, is going to be torn up?
So we've done conceptual, what it could look like when MDT and we're discussing, likely, like I said, ultimately you go out to bid and you have a process for doing that, right? But we looked at it knowing that if the south pass of the bypass were awarded, and if this were awarded, how it would work out. We see probably one construction of overlap, possibly may not be able to if we can get creative, and we should assume maybe 1 year of construction overlap, but what the engineers proposed to us was maybe 2 years on Main Street, the south end, so like Courthouse Couplet South, and get all those roundabouts and things in, so then traffic can divert to First and First, and then the next season doing the north half. So as far as direct impacts to a lot of those businesses on Main Street, it would probably be a construction season during the summer. None of that is set in stone, but we did do some scenarios that kind of laid it out, and we looked at it, but I think if we were lucky enough to be awarded both, likely would be having an overlap construction season of the south half of the bypass and Main Street for a season. And like I said, likely Main Street would be split up south half, north half,
Okay.
with the north half coming first so that you then get the benefits of the circulation if traffic were rerouted off of the bypass. Just, and if the bypass were under construction, and Bob could speak, south half of the bypass, if the bypass will always be taking traffic, even if it doesn't just get closed down. So it would always have traffic going on it as well. So
And then the other point I wanted to make was regarding going to, from the 2 lanes each direction, it will shut down the racing that happens now, unless they want to cross a double line, which would be a pretty significant ticket. So I see that as a win. I see this, no matter how it happens, being painful for people who don't like change, and we have a lot of them that live here, so it's, if we get through it, it's gonna be great, but it's gonna be hard to get through it. And Jed needs to stop racing. on me.
Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jared, you mentioned that the grant application is due the end of June. Was that correct?
That's correct. The grant application for Safe Streets for All FY25 is the end of June, I believe June 26th.
And then what is the time frame before you find out if it's approved or not, or we're accepted?
Typically at least 6 months. So another thing to consider would be you can always apply. You don't, after you apply, you have a grant agreement. I think the council have seen, we accept a grant agreement. You don't know, so you can get in there. The council wouldn't have to, you'd be if you were awarded and you turned it down, you're turning away obviously a $25 million grant, but the council would have that discretion at that time. Foy's, the south half of the bypass is, I believe, going to be it could come sooner, so we're got our fingers crossed, but I believe the date on the schedule is like June 28th. So 2 days after, I believe this application is due. So.
Okay, thank you.
I think someone over here had their hand up. Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, so I circulated that video that talked about road diets, kind of educational thing from the Department of Transportation. And just thinking about this, I mean, that'd be great to kind of circulate, but thinking about this, I'm wondering, if there was kind of any money left over in the budget for all this to produce our own video about Main Street and kind of talk about, because there's a lot of different features in here, and they serve, this presentation was great. And unfortunately, most people won't see it. And so, having a video that we can kind of share and get out there and push into the community that kind of goes over these different features and what their purpose is and what we found of how effective they will be and stuff for our downtown, I think would be really cool. I don't know if there's a little extra in the budget somewhere for that, but I just an idea to throw out there is something that would be helpful, because I do think if you don't dive into the details of this and know that this has actually worked a lot, as Jared, you were saying, for, quite a while now in a lot of different communities, we know it works. You hear about reducing lanes on a road that gets a lot of traffic, you think that's crazy. The average person just, the immediate reaction is actually crazy, but we know it works, and we know why and how and everything else. And so getting that out there is going to be important, because I think the public's not going to understand it otherwise.
Mr. Fisher, since your name was used in vain a minute ago.
I'm not even going to comment. I don't race, I drive.
I learned that from a judge, by the way.
Mr. Graham kind of hit it for me a little bit. It's overwhelming. The business is downtown for a year. I know many of them support something like this, but it could break businesses not having customers through traffic. In addition to that, and I'm not saying, this is really a great concept. I wish it would have happened when we planned the city, if everybody could have just seen forward for 100 years. But 11th Street is going to become a mini bypass. There has to be more consideration of the impacts to people on 11th, especially 11th down on the south end, east and west. It's going to be 45 miles an hour getting to wherever they're going to bypass. If they didn't hit the bypass earlier, I think there just needs to be a little more consideration for folks in that area. I'm not saying another roundabout on 3rd East or 3rd West or something like that. It's just gonna, I don't know if it's speed bumps, I don't know what it is, but huge concern for downtown businesses. I can't wait to hear more feedback from them, and then the potential other mini bypass situations that are created, and agreeing with Mr. Dowd, First and West, already hearing from them. The side effects for short term, as you say, if we're fortunate enough to get both, a year affecting businesses concerns me.
We could throw tariffs in here too.
And
Let's make it really fun. Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Your Honor. So mine is just a really weird question. And it leads to something that's kind of personal in a way. So the only raised areas are currently we have at the park line that's shown in the orange, correct? If we go down, it's only from the intersection past the traffic light at St. Matt's?
Are you talking about in the middle?
Yeah.
Yes, only on the south end. There's not, that's all center turn lane all through downtown, which there is no turn lanes now. So yeah,
Right.
just right there from 6 to the north end of the couplet.
And then this section down here. But mine kind of ends, my thought even ends right at the kind of the courthouse. So we have we done those studies on those streets that do not get Main Street left-hand turns now, if that, what that impact would be on those side streets of what it would be, second, third, fourth, and fifth? Fourth, I guess?
All of the intersecting streets, number streets north of 7th or 6th Street here would have full access, turning access. So left-hand turns would be.
Nothing changed.
Sure, but what, if we're gonna now increase the traffic on those streets, what does that look like, I guess?
You're only increasing it to First. So I'm not
Okay.
quite sure. You're allowing more, so if say right
Sure.
now there's
If I'm
not a
on
light at
Third,
Second, you're
if
gonna
I-
turn it Fourth and go up, so you're not, it's not gonna make a difference going further east.
Or
or west.
I-
You'll just go to First and then go to whatever street you wanna go to.
Sure.
It's, what it does right now is people wanna make a left on Main and they stop in the lane and then that backs everybody all the way up and then there's.
So if I'm on Second, and I'm
Right.
heading south,
Right,
and I live over on the east side, now instead of going up to Fifth, turning over and coming back down, I now have an impact that goes from Main Street straight over to Second to where my house is. And it may not be that much of an impact. I just want to make sure that we're thinking of that's taken into consideration, right? I mean, I realize that it could be changing. The other one that I would have on this would be, and this is kind of a personal thing, we're having parades starting to finally come back, right? So what would that change with having a center section raised elevation? We would just all go to one side, I guess, and just close off the street or close off parking in those sections.
wouldn't have to have a median there if that became an issue. It's a design feature that the public was got a lot of comment about wanting a design feature.
Sure.
You go back, I recall too, it wasn't a highway like this until the early 80s. It actually was a main street.
Correct.
For decades, going back to the early it didn't become in its current configuration until the 80s. And then since that time, it's like, we're going to build a bypass so we can reclaim Main Street.
Yep.
There would be no bypass. If the idea was that we were just going to keep the Main Street a highway, we would have never worried about a bypass. I think we're forgetting that the whole point of the bypass was for this. It's not, well, now we need more lanes down Main Street and we need the bypass, because that's really defeats the whole purpose of why we built the bypass to begin
And I
with.
totally agree
But-
with you on that. I totally agree that I've grown up here my whole life. I remember that transition. These next 2 years also being a tough one, right? Next year, semi-quincentennial of the United States. You better darn well believe there's going to be a big 4th of July parade coming down that street. The year after that is 2027, the 125th of the Northwest Montana Fair and Rodeo. I'm already planning a big parade coming right down there. So I just want to plan as we come through there, what am I going to do as I start planning these things coming down? Right? And I'm not saying stop this for that. I'm just looking at this from my perspective of, I'm going to have to redirect some things.
We're gonna go up Buffalo Hill.
Yeah.
And council, we did look at all that. Optimally, we'd be able to push out the construction season and push it as far as we can, but the bill that was, the funds have to be expended by a certain date. And so
Correct.
there, we wouldn't be able to push it out that far. Like I said, it hasn't gotten to the point where it's slim possibility that we could do it in a construction season, almost 24 hours construction. But that's also part of, like you mentioned, the downtown business owners. Would they rather have 24-hour construction potentially and tons of impact, or maybe south half, north half? So those are some of the things, if we were lucky, if the council chooses to move forward, and if we were lucky enough to get awarded, that we would have to really dive into what that construction schedule would look like.
So then can I just ask this, if we get the grant, everything goes through, are we the one driving it, or will it be MDT?
It would be us.
Okay.
Yes. Save Bob of that. Obviously, we're gonna be partners on that. I mean, but certainly we would, in the past, we've been the we've sub-recipient, but it would likely be the city of Kalispell.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Vosen, just let the governor know that if we get the grant and we go to start, we will invite him to our groundbreaking ceremony. Since it'd be nice to have him here.
Well, I was just gonna comment about the parade, just thinking about that, parades go single file as it is, and you would have no parking, on parade day along the street, so you have that space. But I can see people loving setting up their chairs and stuff on that raised meridian and then running the parade down one of the lanes, and actually might make the parades more enjoyable, actually. I could see that.
Thank you, Your Honor. And to clarify, these are federal DOT funds coming to the state, managed by the city.
They would be coming to the city, managed by the city, similar to the Tiger grant we got for the Parkland Trail.
Okay.
The Bill grant and the West Reserve grants, we've passed through to the state. The city has been the applicant, and then the state has managed those. But we manage the the Tiger grant for the Parkland Trail. And we still, as the city, have some obligations that we have to meet as part of that. But MDT has taken the lead on managing the fine details and the construction management and such. But any project still is going to require MDT approval. It's got to go through their design process. It's their road. So, but we would have likely take the lead on that and then be consulting with them along the way.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got a whole list of items. First, roundabouts on the south side. Mr. Vosen, I think the one west of town. I just want everyone to know, with enough barbecue sauce, Crow tastes pretty good. I'm now a huge fan of that roundabout. I've actually become a fan of roundabouts everywhere I can because it does keep traffic moving. So I do want to publicly acknowledge that. 2, the road noise, easy solution, everyone just go buy a Tesla. 3, and on a serious note, we did start this process with a bypass 14 years ago in the hopes of getting everything done to reclaim Main Street, to turn it into a place. So now that we're nearing completion, and I think, we will get there. We will get to the point where we are complete on the bypass. But one thing that I have noted is once we got the bypass completed, phase 1, downtown traffic reduced to a small extent. Semis were off of the main road, those that were just continuing north. But it seemed like there was a little more vibrancy downtown after that happened. It's just a glimmer of what can happen when we get the bypass completed and we start looking at this process. And I remember, right, we talked about what we're looking at is 40 to 50 years out. We want to make this a place to go to, not a place to go through.
That's right.
And I see this as being a huge asset. When we took out the railroad tracks, the conversion that has had on the properties around it, the changes that that's making, this is probably even more important than that was. So I'm supportive of this plan. I like this. I think this is where we ultimately need to get to. Is there going to be pain getting there?
Yep.
There's pain getting to anything that's worthwhile. Nothing comes easy, and unfortunately, I think too many times we think everything should be easy. But there's going to be some tougher issues that we have to get through. We can solve them. We've solved tougher things before. But I think this is a great layout, and it has been through a process, working with the property owners downtown, the business owners, so they understand what is the net impact to them. Because understand, say it, we have a number one job is to deliver services to the community that they want. Our second job is maintaining the tax base so we can deliver those services. So we need to look at ways to enhance the tax base. And I look at when we go after grants, how do we get a return on that investment? Not just a grant for the sake of the grant. And something like this is going to have a huge return on investment for what it can do for the downtown community, for improving business conditions and living conditions within our community. So I'm 100% behind this. I know we get both grants awarded. We'll find a way to make it work. If we just get this one, Bob Vosen and I will have a boxing match. I'll train a little bit for it, and we'll see what happens at that point in time. All in all, I think this plan looks great. I think this looks like what we've been talking about as a vision. And I'm just looking forward to seeing if we have a tough decision to make on taking the grant award.
We'll take it.
So, any other comments?
Oh, he has one, Your Honor. Office.
Oh, Mr. Vosen.
I have, first I'll throw out a comment. Just as, for those of you, I hesitate even bringing it up. I'm not sure how it's going to be received. But if we look to another city in my district to the south that will remain nameless so I don't get thrown out of here, they went through a lane diet on a street about 15 years ago called West Broadway. It has about the same amount of traffic as what currently, it's a little less. It's about 14,000 cars a day versus we have about 18 out here. In the summer, probably peaks a little higher than what they do. But for those of you that are familiar with West Broadway between Russell and Orange Street, that went through something, didn't quite have the same feel to it, but that it did go from a 4-lane roadway down to a 3-lane roadway. And it's the only area of caution that I would talk about there is lane starvation at those points of drops, not within the project itself, but in the areas leading into the project. People start causing some backups if you ever are southbound in Missoula, Mullen Road gets a little jacked up because everybody wants to be in the through lane when they get to the Russell Street intersection. So it creates some problems. So we need to be cognizant of that. That's a design element that we can deal with. The other thing that I do want to point out, an area of concern, again, here in town, what we did with the most recent project on West Reserve, that was a grant project. Again, great job getting a solid grant application, getting it delivered. We went with the design build method for delivering that project. One of the areas of concern that we had up there that was not real high on my list, and it has proven to be a bit of a headache, and that was the right-of-way acquisition because we didn't have right-of-way secured. I do have more concern because up there we had 4 property owners. Here there's a lot more property owners. And one of them, I'm not sure how they really feel about this whole project. So that's something I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. I see that as a high-risk area here as well. So want to point out that we do have in Western Montana, we've done a lane diet that's been generally successful. So kind of someone had a couple comments and questions about it. I apologize. I don't remember which of you gentlemen it was, but we do have some history with it working well. So that's all I had.
Okay. Any public comment?
Hello. I always want a step stool up here. I'll wear heels next time. First of all, my name's Kisa Davison. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for being here. I am a resident of Kalispell. I live at 312 6th Avenue East, but tonight I'm here as the current board chair for the Kalispell Business Improvement District, we are very excited about the Safe Streets for All program, and particularly about what that means for not only downtown now, but what it means for downtown as soon as the project's finished and even into the future, 30, 40 years. You know, I think our population right now is about 32,000, and 50,000 is going to be just before you can blink. So thinking into the future, I can think of a lot worse problems to deal with than having $25 million. And particularly if, you know, we were afforded both of those grants for this community, I mean, wow, what that would be for all of us who've been waiting for so long. So we are in full support of the council opting to have staff go ahead and submit for that grant, and we really will do anything we can to support that. We have also heard some rumblings downtown from property owners and business owners about that whole construction process. Change is hard. I mean, it's just going to suck. That's really, sorry to be so blunt about it, but it's going to be difficult. And what we would ask from staff, which, you know, Jared and Kittleson, the whole crew has been very good about extending that invitation to downtown businesses and property owners and the community at large to participate. We want to see that continue, and we want to see that continue in a very deliberate manner. So whether that's, you know, weekly implementation meetings, both before and during construction, it will feel like overkill. And I mean, I think that would be a blessing if everybody got bored of talking to each other. So whatever we can do to continue being part of that conversation before we, as a downtown, we really want to continue doing. I also want to raise the ongoing issue of downtown cruising. Are we ready for this? Too late. It's happening again. As we all maybe experienced from last Friday night, which was an organized Kalispell cruise. It's really gotten to the point of being, it's really beyond inconvenient. It's now dangerous, not only from a safety perspective, but it's dangerous for our downtown businesses. It's dangerous for our property owners and the future of those folks. I live on 6th Avenue, right behind the mansion, and it's loud. It's not, and I have a loud truck. My dad was a race car driver. Like, I like driving fast, as evidenced by my driving record, and I like loud cars. So it's not that I don't appreciate that. It's that I also own businesses and properties downtown, and my friends own businesses and properties, and my neighbors, who might not be my friends, but still they own properties downtown, and we are looking for a thriving downtown community. It can't coexist with the current environment that we have. I'm not here asking you to outlaw having fun. What I'm here to ask you as council members to do is to bring us all together at a table and facilitate a conversation about how we can get these opposing interests to come to some agreement on what our future looks like, what our downtown looks like. Because truly, I don't think that the folks who are raising a ruckus want to be waking up babies or causing businesses to lose money. And I don't think the folks trying to run those businesses and hotels and Airbnbs, or just to have a conversation with your friends walking down the street, I don't think they want people to not be able to, you know, drive fun cars and connect as a community. The Kalispell Cruise, as an organized group, they served a purpose. They brought our community together and celebrated community. And I don't personally want to see that disappear, but I do want all of us to come to the table and have a conversation about what that could look like. And really, I'm asking you all as council members to facilitate that conversation. You're here to not only represent the folks who, like me and all of us, show up tonight, but you're here to represent those folks who maybe don't know that their voice matters. So that's really my big ask. Let's all hope for 25 million, and let's come together to figure out how to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I will try to make this fast. If I go over my 3 minutes, feel free to cut me off. I know it's late. I'm going to send these to public comment anyway, so you'll read them. I'm Cameron Dexter. My address is 309 Hawthorne Avenue, and I'm the Director of Policy for Citizens for a Better Flathead. And today I was just going to bring up the issue of Ashley Creek in regards to the safety plan. I'm just going to read right from my notes so I go pretty smoothly here. Ashley Creek is currently under review by the city for a potential water quality standard downgrade. The UAA states that the high transmissivity of the aquifer materials result in surface and groundwater being hydrologically connected. This means that the stormwater carrying pollutants impacts the groundwater of this aquifer, and the UAA seeks a lower listing for Ashley Creek, which would further jeopardize the groundwater as a lower standard allows for a higher contaminant threshold. Because the Main Street Safety Action Plan will work to expand city parking and create a more walkable and potentially more bicycle-friendly space, this is also a good time to address drainage, hydraulics, and begin creating a plan that will provide for cleaner waters for Kalispell residents in the future. The Main Street Safety Action Plan should present itself as an opportunity to better the Kalispell community's environmental footprint. CBF encourages the city at a minimum to strive to maintain the water quality classification of C2 that Ashley Creek is currently listed under, while adopting a clear and immediate goal of working towards the long-term rehabilitation needed for the once healthy and vital creek. Long-term health of Ashley Creek is vital to the community for a multitude of reasons, from recreation purposes to the survival of aquatic species and its overall ecological role in the Flathead watershed. CBF proposes the city be mindful of pushing more stormwater runoff from construction and pollution from vehicles into these drains, which will inevitably end up in the Flathead River and Lake, a staple of the community's economy. So we are recommending an environmentally friendly approach that will help restore Ashley Creek's impaired ecosystem over the long term. The concept design mentions the potential use of permeable pavements, and this is a great start to a more eco-friendly, sustainable system. There are many ways to address climate change and pollution throughout this upgrade that are not necessarily a burden on a budget or funding. Furthermore, and I believe Rachel addressed this, we would like to understand how the city plans to integrate the landscape designs included in the 2012 core plan and 2017 downtown plan into the current Main Street safety plan. You'll see in my comments that I've attached a photo of what that looked like from the 2017 downtown plan for reference. And additionally, how does the safety plan interface with the goal of retaining the historical character of the downtown buildings? We believe it is important to understand the continuity of these plans moving forward. We applaud the city's collaboration in the Flathead Rain Garden Initiative and would like to see how these tools can be integrated into the Main Street Safety Action Plan. This added filtration may help reduce the nutrient load on Ashley Creek Basin, and we've linked a toolkit from the Delta Institute for Green Infrastructure regarding stormwater that may be useful to the city and residents of the city as one more tool to encourage public participation in this process through educational outreach. Additionally, CBF would welcome opportunities to discuss greener approaches to this overall plan and encourage greater public participation in this process with staff, stakeholders, and consultants. And my last note is Lakeside County Water and Sewer District was just approved for their facility upgrade and their groundwater infiltration permit. We are figuring out how we're going to respond to that, but you'll see in my notes, I brought hard copies and also in what I'll send, that we've attached our press release just for review. So I will just pass these.
Actually, if you just give them over here.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for your hard work. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comment? Do we have someone online too? Okay.
I didn't come in here with any set comments, so I'm going to read my chicken scratch. I'm Suzanne Wigginton. I live at 502 3rd Avenue East. My husband and I moved to downtown Kalispell over 10 years ago because we wanted a walkable city, and that's what it is. My office is at 4th and Main. My husband's is at 5th and 1st Avenue West, so we cross Main Street. We are your focus group. My kids go to Hedges, I go cross town at KMS, and next year I got a freshman at Flathead. We live downtown. We work downtown. So one thing I want to say is the lure of this grant is great. It is shiny. It is bright. But not all good money is money. Good money. Not all money is good money. You know what I mean? So one thing I want to say is that when they were talking about the level of incidences, that is an incredibly low level of incidences to me for being a highway with this many people. I don't really see this huge, we have to go after the safety part. I live there. I walk there. I don't see these huge incidences. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but just hear me out on this. When they talk about let's prevent what's going to happen in the future, I feel like I'm watching Minority Report. Remember the movie with Tom Cruise, Report? We're going to stop those future crimes from happening. Here we go. We're going to spend all this money. We're going to stop those future crimes. We're going to stop these future deaths. Are we sure about that? Really? One thing I want to say is, can downtown be safer? Yes, it can. I'm going to tell you, 5th Street and Main is a major issue. You have to be Frogger. You have to play Frogger to cross that road. If you want to talk about speeding from the cruise event, between 4th and 6th, that's where they pick up speed. You need to stop them at 5th. We need a signal there. That's what we need. We need beacons and lights so kids can cross the road there. People can go to work there. We've got great businesses there. I see Main Street from my kitchen window. When I am washing dishes, I can watch every single car. I see that chow light illuminating my kitchen all night long, okay? I know Main Street. Blind intersections, that is another place where we really need to address safety in downtown. There are so many cars that are coming at each other, but there's no stop signs in these intersections. Somebody needs the right-of-way. Right there at 2nd Avenue and 5th Street is a great place where we need some stop signs. This is a very cheap fix, super cheap. You know, these ideas and these concepts are great. The renderings are great, but those renderings show an ideal. The amount of people on those streets in those renderings is like the parade just let out. That is not every day in Kalispell. That is 4th of July. I don't abhor change. I am the queen of trying to change my life. I have not only lived through these concepts, I have lived through the execution of these concepts. And your concern about businesses is very real. I lived in New York City for 12 years, the pedestrian place of the world. When they decided to take Broadway and lane reduce to increase pedestrian traffic, I lived on Broadway. I saw it firsthand. Those businesses died with the construction. They died. Those landlords had such a hard time filling those spaces again. And this is all pre-COVID. So to say, oh, well, it just happened after COVID. Pre-COVID. I moved there in 2002. Okay, this is a long time ago. Those businesses died. Broadway's never come back in those areas where they did this. It's really, really hard. The construction time alone will make some of these mom and pops go out of business. They will. They might not be able to relocate somewhere else. The other thing you have to consider is people are impatient. People, when they are diverted away, they create new habits. If they are diverted away from this construction, they will go other places. When it opens back up, their habits are now formed. They don't come back. They have new places. We all know how much growth is going on north of 93 with the new Costco and all this other stuff. Our city center and where everyone's going is shifting. That's okay. I love downtown. I was on the ARC board for 4 years. Those historical design standards, I'm all over it. That was me and my group, okay? Wider sidewalks are going to bring in the bikes on the sidewalks. They're going to bring in the skateboards. They're going to bring in the motorized scooters and the motorized bikes. That's what you're going to have on those. If you really want the community involvement, which by the way, I think our efforts of community involvement have been incredibly low. I have neighbors that have been here for 50 years who have no idea this is being discussed. No idea. No one on my street knows this is being discussed. And they've been here for a long time. Our community involvement is very low. Very, very low. Everyone keeps talking about the bypass. Guess what? At this point, I know more people who are afraid of traveling on the bypass than traveling on Main. They are literally afraid to travel on the bypass because they have seen horrific accidents on it. Horrific. There's no median. There's nothing to prevent someone from crossing over to the other side at a high speed. They are choosing Main Street, or they're choosing other streets to stay off the bypass. Let the trucks have it, is what they say. 11th is a concern. I have no comment on the roundabout. We'll get there. But here's what I want to say. I want to say sometimes this is the classic tale of that the cure is way worse than the disease. I really wish and hope that you will completely abandon this and go towards much smaller, easily changed, and less expensive ways to help improve the safety like I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, this is Jamie Quinn, 729 6th Avenue West. Have you all lost your mind? This is like lipstick on a pig, but worse. I mean, you're going to spend like $3 million per block? That is absolutely ridiculous. I think if the taxpayers knew that, they would be outraged. Whether it's federal or local money, that's insane. Main Street is some of the best maintained roads in this community. How about we have stuff like, I don't know, stop signs at intersections, or even better, clean drinking water. You brought in consultants from Florida, spent tens of thousands of dollars probably on this, and we still don't have clean drinking water. All right? Like, we're so worried about tourists, but yet we're not worried about the basic infrastructure like water that is your responsibility. Downtown isn't problematic because the roads, it's problematic because there's nowhere to shop. It's not a fun place to be. You know, you've got 2 or 3 places that people actually want to go to, but they don't want to go downtown because there's nothing to go to. Invest in downtown that way, not in roads and the best maintained area of our streets and services in this community. That's ridiculous when we're not worried about school buses having accidents at 4 ways because nobody knows whose right of way it is. That's the safety plan I want to see, not this. This is subsidizing a few businesses that barely have anybody come in. I can't even imagine that this is something you're focused on. It's absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Russell?
Yeah, like I said, the next step would be resolution of intent for a public hearing. And probably be, I think, we have that scheduled for the next meeting, for that resolution of intent.
Yeah,
Right.
May 5th.
And create that opportunity. I would encourage everyone, and this has been a long project. This started with the downtown plan back in like 2017 with numerous outreach public meetings through that. The description within the concept plan and the Main Street Action Plan outlines all the public comment that was outreached and put through there. And again, this is what many of those meetings had the opportunity to comment on and provide more opportunity as we go forward with that. So I think a lot of those information is within there and is part of that historical component. As we look forward, we're looking at budget workshops next Tuesday and Wednesday, and we will have a regular meeting on Monday, but then at 6 o'clock on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll have our budget meetings and likely be able to get through most of that material in those 2 days. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything from council? Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was approached by a service club here this past week, and they were talking about, I think there's a sign in Lions Park, I believe, that has a list of service clubs in the area. I didn't know if that was a city-maintained sign or if that is something the Lions Club put in there.
If you just send me the information, I can get you an answer to it.
Sure, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Mr. Graham?
Yeah, just kind of maybe some response to some of the public comment we heard about intersections, as far as how they're controlled and everything. It's not as easy as just throwing a stop sign up or a stoplight. It has to go through a warrant process. It's extremely extensive, takes a long time, costs a lot of money. I think a lot of people think that that's all we do is we just go out and just drop a couple stop signs in and fix an intersection. But I like public comment. I love public comment. I know people can come to us and say anything and everything. They have the right to do that. But it does not mean it's right. They sit here all the time, and I hear some of the vile comments that come from people sometimes, and I sit here and I listen to it, and I just wish that they would go through and understand that there are reasons things don't happen some of the times. And when it comes to our water, did we not solve that problem when it came to PFAS?
We are entirely under EPA limits.
We're entirely under EPA regulation for what they put out for regulation. Why I keep hearing this about our water, I have no idea. Oh, didn't we do it in under a year too? We had 3 years to do it?
Actually had longer than that. Technically, the EPA just started
Anyhow.
the surveying process,
Right,
which you have
yeah.
3 years just to record.
Right.
We're already underneath it.
Like I said, I love public comment, and I don't begrudge anybody from coming and having their say and everything, but I sit up here for a long time and I don't say anything back. And this is the one time where I'm going to. Thank you.
Anything else? With that, we're adjourned.